Hey,
Hey, Congressman, how you doing?
good. Sorry, I'm a few minutes late. Great to,
Hey,
to
no
be on
worries.
with you.
No worries. I'll make the most of your time. So
No,
my
I
name is
appreciate it, Guy.
Yeah, no worries. So again, my name is Guy. I'm a live streamer here on Twitch and YouTube where I talk politics. And so we watch a lot of C-SPAN and can't help but notice that there's a lack of bipartisanship there. But you seem to get along with everybody. So my first question for you is, why is that a quality that's lacking so much on Capitol Hill?
Well, Guy, I appreciate you saying that. I mean, I think one is you got to recognize people have differences of opinion and not personalize it. So some folks, they want to get into a fight. They know that if you get into a fight with a person on the other side, you get a viral clip on television. And so they're almost itching for a fight. I
Hmm.
try to listen to where someone's coming from, say, here's where we agree, here's where we disagree, and get legislation done. I was on with Nancy Mace and Bill Maher the other night, and folks said, "Oh, you didn't hit her hard enough. You should have hit her harder." And my point is, look, we work on legislation together. I disagree on certain things. I'll point those out, but ultimately, we're there to get the job done. And so it's the attitude you bring into what you think the role of a member of Congress is.
I got you. Is there anybody on Capitol Hill that you're friendly with that people would be surprised to hear?
Well, probably Nancy Mace until our Bill Maher appearance. I am friendly with Mike Gallagher, though he disagrees with my vote these days on. I was not for banning TikTok, but we're on the China Select Committee together. I'm Marco Rubio, and I have a bill on how to have economic development for this country that we worked on cooperatively. JD Vance and I have talked about some of the economic development needed in rural towns and places in Ohio. So, there are ways to find a common ground, even with people you have vehement disagreements with on abortion, on gay rights, on a lot of issues about individual freedoms.
Yeah, I thought your appearance on Bill Maher's show was great, just to show that you can get along with Republicans, because we don't see a lot of that on the outside. Um, and I love your bicameral relationships as well. I saw you introduced a bill in the past with Tommy Tuberville, and even within our own party, like Joe Manchin. You're one of the few progressives that seems to get along with individuals like that. I saw that with the Inflation Reduction Act, you were still talking to Joe Manchin while that was going on, and to everybody's surprise, that bill was introduced. But what's your relationship with somebody like Joe Manchin? Do you talk to him on a casual basis? Like, how does that work?
Yeah, no, I look, Joe Manchin and I have a good relationship. We text sometimes back and forth. I'll see him in the Capitol, and he's always, we're always asking about each other's family. I mean, I had a disagreement with him on some of the issues. I wanted more climate funding and wanted to have less subsidies for fossil fuels, but I knew that we needed his vote, and I don't think going and insulting him on national television was going to be productive. So for a year, while very few people were talking to him, I was in these meetings. I was sometimes the only House member there, sometimes certainly the only progressive there, is trying to keep the process moving. And ultimately, it was Schumer who got the deal done. But I told Manchin that we'd get progressives on board, and we did. And so that kind of engagement, respect, relationships actually leads to outcomes where you now have the largest climate spending. It could have been more gratifying sort of in the moment to go off on Joe Manchin, but that wouldn't have gotten anything done.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, ultimately, you're part of a legislative body, and you're there to get policy put into law. So it makes sense that you would try to get along with everybody as much as possible. Are you concerned that more moderate members like Joe Manchin are leaving now, and like Mitt Romney, Joe Manchin, and being replaced with partisan individuals?
Well, I think in Joe Manchin's seat, it's a loss because we're probably going to lose that seat as a Democratic Party. Rob Portman was a big loss for the Senate. He was a moderate Republican from Ohio, and we did a lot together. And he, believed in actually reaching across the aisle. I think the same can be said for Mitt Romney. Well, I disagree with him. I mean, he's interested in being solution oriented. And I think this 24 election is going to be one of the most polarized, and we're probably going to get a hugely polarized class of senators and congresspeople. The challenge is, how do we find common ground after that? Because it seems like we're getting further and further divided as a country.
Yeah, I agree. It is concerning. But that's why I'm glad people like yourself are there, and that you're out there just showing that, hey, we have to get along. We're in this together. We can't just fight this whole time. Shifting gears a little bit to the TikTok bill, since everybody's talking about that. You were one of 50 Democrats to vote no on it. You've been all over television explaining that it's a freedom of speech concern for you. But I'm curious about the calculus that goes into how you vote on these bills. Ranking member Krishnamurthy from the Chinese Communist Party Select Committee said this is a grave national threat to us. And I know that you and other members of Congress were briefed by our intelligence community on how much of a threat this is. So how do you balance those two? I mean, it's terrifying to hear that kind of stuff from the outside, and then to see people vote no on it. I feel like we're just missing so much information. So I'm curious, how do you make those decisions?
Well, you take it very seriously. You attend the briefings as I did. You listen to the intelligence. Obviously, I can't discuss the intelligence. And then you say, okay, how do we address it? And to me, the two big things we have to address is, how do we make sure your data, my data, Americans' data doesn't get into foreign nationals' hands? And how do we make sure that foreign governments aren't controlling the algorithms that control social media companies? And I think we should pass a law on both. So ban data from going to foreign nations, and make sure that TikTok and Oracle comply with it, or they should be civilly and criminally liable. And ban, have algorithmic transparency. Ask TikTok to reveal what algorithms it uses, and ban any foreign interference, foreign government interference in that. It seems to me those laws could have been crafted to address the genuine, legitimate national security issues, instead of just saying, okay, now we're going to take 170 million Americans and kick them off the app.
So you know all these people, and you know the motivation behind the bill that they put forward, I imagine. And so you mentioned that there are bills to prevent the transfer of our data to foreign countries that have been stuck in committee for years now. Why are they focused on this, a ban, instead of advancing a bill like you just described?
Well, it's easy. It's sexy. You could say, okay, we're going after TikTok, we're going after China, and it makes for a good soundbite. It makes you sound tough on national security. It's easy to digest. Data privacy sounds kind of boring. Data exchange, and so I think that's part of the motivation, but it's not the right solution. And ultimately, we got to get beyond a soundbite culture into what the actual solutions are.
God, that's so frustrating to hear, because it sounds like this is just a soundbite. I mean, the way you framed it in the interviews that I watched recently, you're saying this bill's not going to solve the problem. There's other ways for China to get our data through brokers that are selling it. And so this does nothing at all. And that is incredibly frustrating to hear. So it's not even a solution to the problem.
It's not a solution. And actually, even the proponents of the bill would say that there's very little data that has gone from TikTok and being managed by Oracle to Chinese nationals, let alone the Chinese Communist Party. And far more of our data is going with data brokers or other social media apps. So the bill is just not dealing with the actual threat to Americans. And by the way, the only app that has had election interference has been Facebook in 2016. So why don't we have a broad-based rule, a law saying if you've got foreign interference on your algorithms or apps, then that you should hold criminally and civilly liable? And I guess if we had passed those laws and TikTok was there was evidence that TikTok was violating them, then you go to a ban. But first, have clear laws.
Yeah, I mean, I know you can't reveal what was told to you in these intelligence briefings, and that's for all of our safety. But there must be some terrible fear the government has that China's going to just like turn a switch on in our brains, and all of a sudden we're going to revolt or something weird. So it's kind of intimidating. Let me ask you an unfair question. If you were the deciding vote on this bill, how would you have voted? If it came down to you were the tiebreaker, how would you have voted?
I would have been definitely would have been a no then. I mean, I
Okay.
was a no now. I mean, I don't want 170 billion TikTok influencers. Can you imagine the
Yeah.
memes if it kind of kicks off 170 million Americans for their speech rights? I mean, but beyond the speech, I just don't think it's the right solution. I mean, why not pass data privacy? Why not pass these laws that we've been discussing about not transferring data? So I would have been a no.
Okay. Fair enough.
But there
Um,
are times there. It's a good question because there are times where you vote no, but if you're a deciding vote, you may vote differently. So it's a fair question.
okay. I appreciate that. But look, this Congress is highly dysfunctional, and I don't blame you. You're the one guy who seems to be trying, and there's a lot of people fighting you on this. But I think we both agree that this is probably the last attempt to do something about TikTok before the election. So, are you concerned that nothing's going to come up between now and the elections, or is that not like? I just don't see anything happening anytime soon. If it's not this, then your solution sounds great, but I don't see that happening till at least January when you guys take over, which I assume you
I
will.
agree. I mean, and this is the concerning part that you haven't had any appetite to do real solutions, and even the TikTok ban, would take place 6 months from now. So probably so well after the election, in terms of actually getting moving, and it's unlikely to pass the Senate. It's probably going to get caught up in the court. So the question is, how do we actually pass something that can survive scrutiny and become law? Very unlikely we do that before 2024. And so we're really at the mercy of these tech companies to come up with voluntary standards to make sure that we're not facing election interference or election manipulation.
Yeah, that's not a great position to be in, but I guess this is where we are. So it is what it is. Speaking of 2024, I'll shift to the upcoming elections here, and our president is up for re-election, and the number one complaint you hear is that he's old and that people would like to see somebody else. Do you have any stories of interacting with President Biden or anybody close to him, advisors that you can share that help with your confidence in Biden in a second term?
I do, but I'm well aware of the Saturday Night Live skit where they spoofed all these Democratic politicians. They were basically, they had all these clips of the president, and they said, but every Democratic politician says 2 months ago when I met Joe Biden, he was perfectly rational and perfectly coherent. And they've got like a line of these 10 Democratic politicians saying the same thing. So maybe they'll pull this clip for their next spoof. But the reality is that when I did see the president few weeks ago in South Carolina, we talked about Gaza and we talked about the Middle East. And not only did he have an awareness that I had been critical about some of his policies, he said he understood the protesters and that some of the progressives were upset at him. He was pushing Bibi Netanyahu. So it was a pretty detailed conversation, a few minutes on the Middle East. And that was in a rope line. And so my experience has been that whether you like his policies or don't like his policies, he's certainly in charge of his policies and understands in detail those policies.
Yeah, I appreciate you sharing that. I wasn't aware of that Saturday Night Live skit. I'll have to go back and watch that. But I have all the confidence in the world in President Biden, and I've been watching him give speeches, and so he flubs a word here or there. So do I. But I think we're lucky to have him. His experience has been great, like with the debt ceiling negotiations with Kevin McCarthy.
Yeah.
He walked all over him. So I'm thrilled to have him.
Good for you. Next time tell the president and his team, we've got a big influencer who is on your side. You're not a unicorn, hopefully. And I think very highly of the president. I think he's done a lot in terms of the achievements of climate, on the achievements on infrastructure, on jobs. People remember how concerned and panicked this country was during a lot of COVID, how difficult it was. And he steered us out through some very difficult times. He's done a remarkable job on Ukraine, on Gaza. I didn't agree fully with his policies in terms of too much of a blank check on Netanyahu, but he's correcting, and I think now has the right balance. So, I'm a strong believer in his reelection.
Yeah, I mean, the legislation that was passed with a 50-50 split Senate and a small majority in the House, I mean, stuff we've been asking for years, infrastructure and bringing back manufacturing to America, which I know you're a big proponent of.
Yeah.
So it's been incredible what he's done. I think the history books will write quite favorably about President Biden when all is said and done. So I'm thrilled to see him get a
Absolutely.
second term.
Absolutely. I think history will definitely be kind to him, and I think we are in a good position to get a second term. I mean, the polls right now are tied, but he was down a few points, so that they're already narrowing in terms of just the last few weeks after the State of the Union. And I think as people really focus on, do we want Donald Trump back, that choice and Biden will become clearer. Before that, he was kind of running against a no opponent, and so that's hard.
Yeah, and I think people don't really understand the nominating process, and they probably thought there's a chance to get somebody else, so they weren't really looking for reasons to like Biden for a second term, perhaps. But Biden can't do it without you in the House and the Senate, and it feels like control of the House is going to come through some swing districts in California and New York, something you've talked about. So how I'm curious what your plan is to help out some of these swing districts in California from your position. Is there anything you can do to help out swapping some of these districts to Democrats?
Absolutely. I mean, there are four districts that are going to be critical districts with Mike Garcia, with Valdeo, with Ken Calvert, Katie Porter's old district. And I've been helping with fundraising for them. I've been helping with doing email blasts into those districts to try to get the vote out. If they want, I'll come campaign there. But California is focused on trying to turn over 4 seats, and that's part of the path to the majority.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely seems doable. I'm excited for the 119th Congress. I think there's going to be quite a blue wave. I'm always optimistic, though, and so
well, it's good because they say that's how Republicans are. They're always like, we're going to win, and Democrats have like 15 theories of why we're not going to do well. Some of it is, when you go out and play sport or a game, you have to have optimism and confidence, and then the chips fall where they may. But I don't think there's any value in over intellectualizing it or hyperventilating about it. I think we're in a strong position. We've got a better message on abortion. We got a better message on guns. We got a better message on actual jobs. And we got a better message on the president's international leadership. He doesn't say crazy things that, and so I think we have a good chance.
Yeah, and then the results point to us doing well. I mean, you look at New York's 3rd congressional district with Tom Suozzi. That was an absolute blowout, and that was on the issues you just talked about. So I'm quite optimistic. If things do go as well as I hope, what are some things that we could look forward to in the 119th Congress? Like, what do you think could happen? I mean, there must be some things you're excited about. I mean, hopefully we hold on to that Senate majority and keep people like Sherrod Brown in there. And then we've got the House. What do you think we can look forward to?
I think we finally get a living wage in this country. I think we were tried and was frustrated that wasn't included in the American Rescue Plan. We get childcare at a reasonable cost. I'm calling for childcare at $10 a day, $300 a month, but at some level we'll get a childcare bill. We'll have more investments in climate and investments in terms of public transportation and taking a decarbonization of industries, more policy to bring factories, towns, and economic activity in places left out. I'm working on trying to get economic technology opportunities in different parts of the country. I think you'll see the president do that as well.
That's awesome. Those are all exciting things, and I do feel like those things could come to fruition. So exciting times. I'll shift to my final group of questions here about the California Senate race. I guess, do you still regret not getting into the race?
No.
I don't want to say regret. I'm sorry. I say, do you regret at all not getting into the race?
No, because I had so much admiration for Barbara Lee, and I think she is fantastic in terms of her war and peace record. And I think Adam Schiff proved to be a very, very capable candidate. I mean, he was on TV everywhere. He's got more money than anyone. He's going to be our senator.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I have to be careful I say this, but it seems like now that it's Adam versus Steve Garvey, the Republican, Adam doesn't need as many resources, and he can help out some of those further down ballot races, the House races that you mentioned previously. So that seems to be a bit of an advantage now for us.
Absolutely. And Katie is helping him out too. I mean, Katie Porter is sending out emails. I'm sure Barbara will as well. So instead of three candidates fighting against each other, we're going to have everyone rowing on the same team. And I do think that that is one advantage in taking back those 4 California seats.
Yeah, and I read in an article that you did an interview when you passed on running for Senate that you say you'd rather be in the House right now because it's a great place for opportunity, but it looks like the most dysfunctional place in all of government right now where nothing can get done. It's a total clown show. Again, not your fault. You're on the team trying to do something, but the Republicans are in complete disarray with kicking out a speaker for the first time in our nation's history. And, things don't seem like they're getting any better. So why do you like being in the House right now?
Well, 2 years ago it was great, right? I mean, before the Republicans took over, we passed all these things in the House: gun violence legislation, abortion, codifying abortion. We passed the IRA through the House. I mean, and some of it died in the Senate. We passed a $15 minimum wage. We passed paid family leave. So the House is a more progressive body. You get a lot. It's a younger body. It's got a lot more diversity. It's got a lot of people pushing the envelope, and I just think it's closer to the people. I just think it's a hub of activity for what the future of the Democratic Party looks like, and I'm very excited about the younger progressives who have won from around the country.
Yeah, that's fair. But it seems like there probably won't be an opportunity for you to get into the Senate for many years now. Alex Padilla and Adam Schiff are pretty young, so it felt like a rare moment for you to keep moving up. So do you think that you could be in the Senate one day?
Well, the Pelosi had a great career out of the House, and there are a lot of people out of the House, and who knows what the future holds. But I represent a really influential district in Silicon Valley. We've got Apple, Google, Tesla, NVIDIA, $10 trillion of wealth. A lot of what I've been focused on is how do we get that economic opportunity into other parts of the country. It used to be you had to be a senator to have someone like you invite them on, but now the Sunday shows, the influencers, TikTok, you could go viral on. You don't have to be a senator. You just have to be willing to put yourself out there. So I think the media dynamic has changed about what it takes to have an impact on American politics. The title matters, but matters less than a person's ability to sway popular opinion.
Yeah, no, that's totally fair. Not to start any drama, but it seems like Katie Porter and Barbara Lee split the progressive vote in the Senate race, whereas Adam Schiff didn't have any competition from his wing of the party, and that seemed to be a huge advantage for him. And perhaps if it was just Barbara Lee or Katie Porter against Adam Schiff, one of them would have advanced in the top two. Is there anything that you think can be done to help unite the progressive wing of the party more?
You're right. I mean, one of them probably could have given Adam a better run. I mean, the money advantage still would have been hard to overcome, but the vote did split. I think it's hard to tell people not to vote, or not to run. That's not an easy thing to do, and you can't get that kind of consensus. But what I do think we could have is just more energy on the progressive side of actually voting and getting involved, and then letting the chips fall where they may. In most cases, you have less progressive challengers and more challengers in the Adam Schiff lane. This was just a unique situation, I think, because they saw that Bernie Sanders had won the state, and it was right for a progressive to win.
I hear you. I mean, I'm just armchair analyst, but
Yeah.
It seemed like once Adam Schiff was censured by the House, it was game over, and he was
I agree with that. I think that that's the other thing with Adam is that while he may not be as progressive as Katie or Barbara on matters of war and peace and on economics, he kind of became the face of anti-Trumpism and the Trump impeachment and the censure. So the day, I don't know a single progressive who dislikes Adam Schiff. Many people say, okay, we prefer someone else on the economy or on abortion rights, but Adam has been a good warrior for our cause. And so I agree with you. The day he was censured and the day Trump sort of became the person who was going to run in 2024, Adam was the obvious choice.
So does that frustrate you though? Again, I'm not trying to cause drama here, but then like, why did Katie Porter and Barbara Lee run? Because now they're gone and their seats are empty and they're out of government, you know? Like what
Well,
can
you
they
can
do
come
now?
back. You can come back.
Okay.
I mean, Barbara hopefully will get appointed by the president to something, and Katie can
Okay.
run statewide. She can run for attorney general. She can run for governor. So politics is, there's never a straight line, and people, if you're passionate about it, I've lost two races before I won. You don't have to win every race.
Yeah.
Better to win than lose.
Yeah, fair enough. You had mentioned in an interview about Barbara Lee that if the money was even, then she could have made it to the top two. Um, did you mean getting money out of politics or getting more money to progressive candidates?
Well, both. I mean, look, if we shouldn't have super PACs in Democratic primaries. So let's agree to that. No super PACs in Democratic primaries. I'm the only candidate who doesn't take, or not the only one. I'm one of 10 who doesn't take PAC money, lobbyist money, special interest money. Let's get that out of politics. But then we do need more fundraising for progressive candidates. And Barbara Lee isn't going to get the same high dollar donors, but maybe she could get we should have to build a progressive army like Bernie Sanders did, like John Fetterman did, like when he ran, like AOC has, and that never materialized. And so that put her at a big disadvantage.
I gotcha. Just a final couple of quick questions here. I consider myself a progressive. I voted for Bernie in the 2020 primary.
Oh,
I
you
voted
did?
for him. I did. I voted for him in the 2016 primary as well because I believe in progressive policy, Medicare for all, right to housing. I
That's
believe in all
great.
this stuff.
Yeah.
I'm just pragmatic. And so whoever the guy is that can get us closer to that right now, I'm going to support. So, but I do, like Adam Schiff, for example, I liked Adam Schiff. He says he wants to get rid of the filibuster in the Senate. So I'm all for that. I think that's great. Um, what was I going to ask you? I'm sorry. Oh, last question, last couple questions quickly here. You go on alternative media like this a lot. What do you see as the advantage of coming and talking to people like myself here over on Twitch or YouTube? Because you go on like breaking points and I saw you debated crystal ball for 20 minutes on Gaza. Like what makes you do that?
Well, I debated also Bridge on her bad faith on her podcast too. Look, I think the State of the Union is great, and folks like my mom watch it and they clap and they watch MSNBC. But you're reaching that demographic. But what about people who are in their 20s and 30s and 40s, and how are you reaching them? And most of them are telling you aren't tuning into the State of the Union. Most of them aren't tuning in when I'm on Jake Tapper or Wolf Blitzer. That's just the reality. And they're a lot of times the pulse of what's going on in the country. What Bernie understood, what Obama understood, is if you get the kids, if you get the younger folks, they'll get their parents. And I go on because I want to be part of a movement, as a movement candidate, as someone who's interested in getting Medicare for all, free college, higher tax on the rich, but a progressive vision of economic Bill of Rights with economic job creation in these different parts of the country. That to do that, you got to have an army of folks behind you and people getting out your message. And that's not going to be the people watching just at home on MSNBC. So I don't know your audience. My guess is that many of them are active on social media. Maybe I'll get a few more TikTok followers after this, maybe a few more followers on different platforms.
I got you. Yeah, that's great. Last question then. Are you concerned that progressives are starting to turn almost into one-issue voters with the Gaza situation? It just seems like attacks on people like John Fetterman, who would be considered a progressive on every single issue except for Israel-Gaza, people are willing to cancel him. And I know it's more of an online thing, but does that concern you at all that progressives are becoming very, very focused on the Israel-Gaza situation instead of other issues as well?
Look, I understand right now why people are focused on that as a progressive. It's not just about Gaza. It's just about the sense of morality. And when you're seeing thousands of women and children die, and you're seeing literal starvation of kids because Netanyahu is not allowing aid into the border, that's an issue. I mean, yes, Hamas did a brutal attack on October 7th, and they have to be held accountable. And yes, Hamas also hijacks some of the food. But the point is, as a democracy, our obligation is to do right by people and to get the aid in and to see the end of the war with the release of the hostages. And I think that is a appropriate moment of advocacy and attention. So I get it. But I also think that in a democracy, in a multiracial, multi-ethnic democracy, you have to have multiple issues, and no single issue should be determinative in actually electing Joe Biden. And so this is about abortion. This is about gun violence. This is about LGBTQ rights. It's about rich paying their fair taxes. And I've chosen to say, okay, I disagree with the president on some of the ways he's embraced Netanyahu, but I'm still going to campaign for him because I agree with him on a lot of other issues, and he's listening to me and listening to activists, at least on Gaza, and shifting. And John Fetterman and I have worked together on political reform. I mean, I have a bill on getting rid of stock trading in Congress, to not have PAC money, lobbyist money, to have term limits for Supreme Court justices. So why would you want to limit yourselves in terms of the allies we're going to need? It's a bold agenda, the progressive agenda, to raise wages, to get Medicare for all, to get free college, to tax the rich more, to have childcare. How are we going to do that without allies? And you're not going to get allies who are perfect.
That's a great answer. I really appreciate that. Thank you so much, Congressman Khanna, for joining me here on my platform. It's been a pleasure cheering you and all the Democrats on in the 118th Congress, and we're really looking forward to the 119th Congress to see what you guys can do. So thanks again for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Guy. I really enjoyed it, and I appreciate your in-depth knowledge of politics. That's great.